My name is Naomi, 62 years old, and this Christmas was supposed to be special. After losing my husband Robert 3 years ago, holidays have been quiet in my little Maine home. This year I spent weeks planning the perfect dinner for my only son Michael and his new wife Jessica. The turkey, the decorations, the gifts, everything had to be just right. I never imagined I'd end up alone at my beautifully set table, wondering where I went wrong. If you're watching this, let me know where you're tuning in from and hit that subscribe button. Family is everything during the holidays, and my story might help someone feeling forgotten this Christmas season. The calendar had barely flipped to November when I started planning Christmas dinner. After Robert passed away from a sudden heart attack 3 years ago, the holidays became more important than ever. They were my lifeline to family connection, especially with Michael, my only child. Michael had always been my pride and joy. I raised him mostly on my own, even when Robert was alive. My husband worked long hours as a truck driver, often away for weeks at a time. I was the one who attended every school event, nursed every fever, and celebrated every milestone. We had our struggles during his teenage years, but what mother and son don't? After college, Michael moved to Boston for work. Only a 3-hour drive, but it felt like oceans away sometimes. Then came Jessica. They met at his accounting firm 2 years ago. I remember the first time he brought her home to meet me. She was beautiful, with perfectly styled blonde hair and a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. I tried to welcome her warmly, cooking Michael's favorite pot roast and sharing embarrassing stories from his childhood. Jessica smiled politely, but kept checking her phone throughout dinner. "Mom tells the same stories every time," Michael had said, rolling his eyes at Jessica, who giggled in response. The comment stung, but I laughed it off. They got married last spring in a lavish ceremony that Jessica's parents mostly paid for. I contributed what I could from my modest savings, but it wasn't much on my fixed income from the small pension Robert left and my part-time job at the library. The wedding was beautiful, though I felt somewhat sidelined during the planning and the event itself. Jessica's mother seemed to make all the decisions. After the wedding, our phone calls became less frequent. Michael used to call me every Sunday without fail. Now weeks would pass without hearing his voice. When I mentioned it, he always had a reasonable excuse. Work was busy, they were renovating their condo, Jessica's family needed help with something. For this Christmas, I was determined to reconnect with my son and hopefully build a better relationship with my daughter-in-law. My small 2-bedroom house wasn't fancy like Jessica's parents' home in Cambridge, but it was warm and filled with memories. I spent the first week of December transforming it into a Christmas wonderland. I pulled out all the special decorations from the attic, the handmade ornaments Michael had created throughout his childhood, the angel tree topper that had been in Robert's family for generations, and the nativity set we bought on our honeymoon. I strung lights around every window and placed candles on every surface. The artificial tree I'd bought 2 years ago, when the real ones became too difficult for me to manage alone, stood proudly in the corner of the living room. "Mom, it looks like Santa's workshop exploded in your living room," Michael had commented during a video call when I proudly showed him my decorations. Jessica was visible in the background, raising an eyebrow, but saying nothing. "Well, Christmas only comes once a year," I replied cheerfully, ignoring the slight criticism. "I want everything to be special when you both come over." "About that," Michael said, hesitating slightly. "Jessica's parents invited us for Christmas Eve." My heart sank, but I quickly recovered. "That's fine, honey. Christmas Day is what we planned anyway, right? 2 o'clock. "Yeah, that still works," he confirmed after a quick glance at Jessica. 2 o'clock on Christmas Day. Planning the menu took another week. I wanted everything to be perfect. I made lists of all Michael's favorite dishes: roast turkey with chestnut stuffing, creamy mashed potatoes, green bean casserole with the crispy onions he loved as a child, cranberry sauce made from scratch the way my mother taught me, and Robert's secret recipe for gravy that Michael always asked for seconds of. For dessert, I planned apple pie and pumpkin pie. I couldn't decide which to make, so I decided to make both. Michael always had room for dessert, no matter how much he ate during the main course. Shopping for everything strained my budget, but I didn't care. This Christmas needed to be special. I carefully selected gifts, too. a handmade scarf I'd been knitting for months for Michael in the deep blue that matched his eyes. For Jessica, I found a beautiful silver picture frame and inserted a photo from their wedding day. I hoped she would appreciate the personal touch, even though we weren't close yet. I also splurged on a gift card to their favorite restaurant in Boston. It wasn't much, just $100, but it represented nearly a week's pay from my library job. I wanted them to have a nice evening out together. As Christmas approached, I called Michael twice to confirm our plans. Both times he seemed distracted, but confirmed they would be there at 2 o'clock sharp. "Is there anything special Jessica would like me to make?" I asked during our last call a week before Christmas. "No, Mom, whatever you make is fine," he said quickly. "Look, I've got to go. We'll see you on Christmas Day." The call ended before I could say much else. A knot formed in my stomach, but I pushed the feeling aside. The holidays were stressful for everyone. Michael was probably just busy with work before the break and preparing for their Christmas Eve with Jessica's family. As I hung up my wreath on the front door and laid out the Christmas-themed welcome mat, I allowed myself to hope. This Christmas would be different. This Christmas would bring us closer. This Christmas would help Jessica see me as family rather than competition. This Christmas would feel complete again. Little did I know how wrong I would be. Christmas Eve arrived with a light dusting of snow, just enough to make everything look like a scene from a holiday card. I woke early, too excited to sleep in. The house was peaceful with just the soft twinkling of the Christmas tree lights breaking the morning stillness. I put on my favorite Christmas playlist, the old classics by Bing Crosby and Nat King Cole that Robert and I used to dance to in the kitchen. The familiar melodies filled the house as I tied my apron and began the day's work. First on the agenda was the turkey. I had splurged on a fresh one rather than frozen, spending a little extra for quality. At 14 pounds, it was probably too large for just 3 people, but I wanted leftovers to send home with Michael and Jessica. I carefully washed the bird, patted it dry, and prepared my herb butter mixture, a blend of softened butter, fresh sage, rosemary, and thyme from the small herb garden I maintained on my kitchen windowsill year-round. As I massaged the herb butter under the skin, I remembered teaching Michael this very technique when he was just 10 years old. He had been so eager to help, his small hands carefully mimicking my movements. "Is this right, Mom?" he had asked, looking up with those earnest blue eyes. "Perfect, sweetheart," I had told him. "You're a natural chef." The memory made me smile as I stuffed the cavity with my chestnut stuffing, another family recipe passed down through generations. Once the turkey was safely in the oven, I moved on to the pies, which needed to bake before the turkey monopolized the oven. The apple pie came first, peeling and slicing the tart Granny Smith apples, tossing them with cinnamon, nutmeg, sugar, and a squeeze of lemon. The pumpkin pie followed, the rich aroma of spices filling the kitchen as I mixed the filling. By midday, both pies were cooling on the rack, and the turkey was slowly roasting, filling the house with its mouth-watering aroma. I took a break to set the table in the dining room, which I rarely used since Robert passed. The good china came out, the set we received as a wedding gift 35 years ago, with delicate blue flowers around the edges. I polished the silver cutlery that had belonged to my grandmother until it gleamed. Each place setting got a Christmas cracker, a tradition Robert had brought from his partially English heritage. The centerpiece was a fresh pine arrangement with red candles that I had splurged on from the local florist. Crystal water glasses and the wine glasses we used for special occasions completed the elegant table. I stepped back to admire my work. The table looked like something from a magazine, festive, elegant, and welcoming. I hoped Jessica would appreciate the effort. The afternoon was spent preparing the side dishes. I made the cranberry sauce, letting the berries pop and simmer with orange zest and a cinnamon stick. The green bean casserole was assembled, ready to be baked tomorrow. Potatoes were peeled and left in cold water overnight. Everything was timed to perfection for tomorrow's feast. At 4 o'clock, my phone rang. My heart leaped when I saw Michael's name on the screen. "Hi, honey," I answered cheerfully, wiping my hands on my apron. "Hey, Mom." He sounded rushed. "Just checking in before things get crazy at Jessica's parents' house tonight." "Everything okay?" I asked, suddenly concerned by his tone. "Yeah, all good. Just wanted to confirm for tomorrow. 2 o'clock, right?" Yes, everything's ready. The turkey's going to be perfect. Great. Jessica says hi, he added, though I hadn't heard her voice in the background. Tell her I'm looking forward to seeing you both tomorrow. I made apple pie her favorite, right? Yeah. Look, Mom, I've gotta go. Jessica's parents are waiting for us. Of course, honey. Have a wonderful Christmas Eve. I love you. You too, Mom. Bye. The call ended abruptly, leaving me with an uneasy feeling. Something in his voice hadn't sounded right, but I couldn't put my finger on what. Perhaps he was just stressed about spending the evening with his in-laws. I tried to shake off my concern and returned to my preparations. As evening fell, I finished wrapping their gifts. I had spent hours making the wrapping special. Thick red paper with gold ribbon for Michael's gifts, and silver paper with white ribbon for Jessica's. Each had a handwritten tag with a personal message. I arranged them carefully under the tree next to the small pile of gifts I had received from friends and neighbors. Before bed, I took one last look around the house. Everything was perfect. The decorations glowed softly, the kitchen was prepared for tomorrow's final cooking, and an air of expectation hung in every room. I said a little prayer of gratitude and hope as I turned out the lights. In bed, I found myself too excited to sleep right away. I imagined tomorrow's gathering, the three of us around the table sharing food and conversation. Perhaps this would be the Christmas that Jessica would finally warm up to me. Perhaps this would be the beginning of new traditions for our expanded family. As I drifted off to sleep, snowflakes began to fall outside my window, promising a white Christmas. Everything was set for a perfect holiday. If only I had known what awaited me the next day, I might have held on to those peaceful moments a little longer. Christmas morning dawned bright and clear. The snow from the night before had left just enough of a white blanket to make everything look magical. I woke at 6 a.m., too excited to sleep any longer. For a moment I lay in bed listening to the silence of my home, imagining how different it would sound in a few hours, with Michael's deep laugh echoing through the rooms. I put on my special Christmas outfit, a red sweater with a subtle snowflake pattern and black slacks. I even applied a little makeup and styled my silver-streaked hair, wanting to look my best for the photos we would surely take. Robert always said I looked beautiful when I made an effort, and part of me still dressed for him, even though he was gone. The kitchen became command central as I moved through my carefully planned schedule. First, the turkey came out of the refrigerator to come to room temperature before going back into the oven. The potatoes went on to boil. The stuffing that hadn't fit inside the bird was prepared for baking, and the cranberry sauce was taken out to reach serving temperature. By 10 o'clock, the house was filled with delicious aromas. The turkey went into the oven, timed perfectly, to be done just before their arrival. I turned on the Christmas music again, humming along as I worked. At noon, I set out some appetizers on the coffee table in the living room. A cheese plate, some stuffed mushrooms, and the spiced nuts that Michael always snacked on while waiting for dinner to be ready. A bottle of champagne chilled in the refrigerator for a toast when they arrived. Everything was on track. The table looked beautiful, the food was coming along perfectly, and my heart was full of anticipation. I checked my phone several times, but there were no messages from Michael. I took that as a good sign. No news meant no changes to our plans. At 1:30, I took a quick shower and changed into my second outfit, a green velvet dress I had splurged on specifically for today. I wanted everything to be special, including my appearance. I even put on the pearl necklace Robert had given me for our 30th anniversary just before he passed. At 1:45, I did a final check of everything. The turkey was resting under foil, looking golden and perfect. The sides were keeping warm. The pies were on display on the sideboard next to the Christmas cookies I had baked earlier in the week. The house was immaculate, festive, and welcoming. 2 o'clock came. I positioned myself in the living room where I could see the driveway, watching for Michael's blue sedan to pull up. The minutes ticked by on the grandfather clock in the corner, a wedding gift from Robert's parents long gone now. 2:15. Still no car in the driveway, no text message or call. I tried to stay calm, assuming they were running late. Traffic could be bad even on Christmas Day. Or perhaps they had trouble leaving Jessica's parents' house. Family gatherings often ran longer than expected. At 2:30, I sent a casual text, "Hope you're on your way. Turkey's ready when you are. No response came. I tried to distract myself by checking on the food, making small adjustments to keep everything at the perfect temperature without drying out. The potatoes were covered with a damp cloth. The gravy was reheated with a splash of broth to maintain its consistency. 3 o'clock. My anxiety was building. I called Michael's phone. It went straight to voicemail. "Hi, honey, it's Mom. Just wondering what your ETA is. Food's all ready. Call me back when you get this." I tried to keep my voice light, but worry was creeping in. This wasn't like Michael. He was usually reliable, and if plans changed, he would call. Unless something had happened. My mind started racing with possibilities, none of them good. An accident on the icy roads. A sudden illness. By 4 o'clock, I had called 3 more times and sent several texts. No response. The food was beginning to suffer despite my best efforts. The turkey was cooling the sides, losing their freshness. But more than the food, my heart was sinking with each passing minute. In desperation, I opened Facebook on my phone, something I rarely did. And there it was. A post from Jessica just an hour earlier. A smiling selfie with Michael at what was clearly her parents' dining table laden with food. The caption read, "Christmas feast with the family, #blessed, #Merry Christmas." The phone nearly slipped from my trembling hand. They hadn't been delayed. They weren't in trouble. They simply hadn't come. They had chosen to stay at Jessica's parents' house instead, without even bothering to tell me. 5 o'clock. The house that had felt so warm and festive now seemed to mock me with its emptiness. I sat alone at my beautifully set table, 3 place settings staring back at me. The candles remained unlit, the Christmas crackers unopened, the champagne unchilled. As darkness fell outside, I finally accepted that they weren't coming. No one was coming. I would be spending Christmas alone, surrounded by enough food for a family that had abandoned me. I picked up my phone one last time, staring at that Facebook post. Several comments beneath it wished them Merry Christmas. None mentioned me or the dinner they were supposed to be attending. It was as if I didn't exist, as if the plans we had made meant nothing. With shaking hands, I began to clear the table. 1 plate for myself, a small portion of each dish I had so lovingly prepared. I sat at the head of the table where Robert used to sit and tried to eat, but each bite tasted like ashes. The silence was deafening, broken only by the occasional Christmas carol still playing softly in the background, now a painful reminder of the joy I had expected to feel today. At 7:12 p.m., my phone finally chimed with a text from Michael. "Sorry, Mom, change of plans. Staying at Jessica's parents'. We'll call tomorrow." That was it. 8 words to dismiss hours of preparation, weeks of planning, and a lifetime of love and sacrifice. No explanation, no apology. Just change of plans, as if we had been discussing something as trivial as a movie choice. The tears I had been holding back finally broke free, streaming down my face as I sat alone in my Christmas finery, surrounded by cooling food and unopened gifts. Outside, snow began to fall again, covering the world in silence, while inside, my heart broke into 1,000 pieces. The hours after I received Michael's text passed in a blur of hurt and disbelief. I sat at my dining table long after my untouched food had gone cold, staring at those 8 callous words on my phone screen. "Sorry, Mom, change of plans. Staying at Jessica's parents." A lifetime of motherhood reduced to an afterthought. Eventually, I found myself moving through the motions of cleaning up my body on autopilot while my mind reeled. I carefully wrapped each dish in plastic and placed it in the refrigerator. Enough food to last me weeks. The turkey, once the centerpiece of my planned family dinner, now just represented my foolish hope. As I worked, anger began to replace the initial shock. How could Michael do this to me? What kind of son abandons his mother on Christmas without so much as a phone call? And what kind of wife encourages such behavior? With trembling hands, I dialed Michael's number again. This time he answered on the 4th ring. "Mom, hey." His voice was artificially bright with the sound of laughter and music in the background. "Merry Christmas." "Michael." My voice came out steadier than I expected. "What happened today?" Oh, right. Sorry about that. Jessica's parents really wanted us to stay for dinner, and it just made sense since we were already here. It made sense to not call your mother, to let me sit here with a full Christmas dinner and no guests. I could hear the hurt creeping into my voice despite my effort to stay calm. Look, Mom, I meant to call earlier, but things got hectic and I called you 4 times, Michael. I texted repeatedly. My phone was off during dinner, he said dismissively. It's not that big a deal. We can reschedule. Reschedule Christmas. The absurdity of his suggestion fueled my anger. I spent weeks planning this dinner. I spent money I barely had to make everything perfect for you and Jessica. Mom, you're overreacting. It's just dinner. His voice had taken on that patronizing tone he sometimes used as if I were being unreasonable. In the background, I heard Jessica's voice. Is that your mom again? Tell her we'll see her next month or something. Next month, I repeated incredulous. Michael sighed heavily. Jessica wants to talk to you. Before I could object, Jessica was on the line. Naomi, hi. Look, Michael feels really bad about the miscommunication. Miscommunication, I echoed. There was no miscommunication. We had plans. You both confirmed multiple times. Well, plans change, Jessica said breezily. My parents really wanted us here, and it just made more sense logistically. You understand, right? Being all the way out in Maine by yourself, it's a lot to ask Michael to drive 3 hours each way. He's been making that drive for holidays since college. I pointed out, my voice growing colder. And I'm his mother. Yes, well, we're his family now too, Jessica replied, emphasis on the we. And frankly, Michael finds these obligations stressful, always having to split holidays, rushing from place to place. Obligations? The word stung like a slap. Is that what I am to my son? An obligation? That's not what I meant. Jessica backpedaled, though her tone suggested otherwise. Look, Naomi, I think you're being a bit dramatic about this whole thing. It's just one Christmas. Put Michael back on. I demanded, my patience gone. He's helping my dad with something right now, Jessica lied smoothly. I'll have him call you tomorrow when things are less emotional, okay? Jessica. I started, but she had already hung up. I stood in my kitchen, phone in hand, utterly stunned by the conversation. The dismissal. The casual cruelty. In that moment, I felt more alone than I had since Robert's funeral. With shaking hands, I opened my photo gallery and looked at pictures from Michael's childhood. His gap-toothed smile on his 8th birthday. The proud grin when he graduated high school. The young man in his college cap and gown, arm around my shoulders. Had I failed him somehow? Had I raised a son who could so easily discard his mother? Or was Jessica the one who had changed him? The thought emerged unbidden, but once there I couldn't dismiss it. Michael had never been callous before meeting her. He had always been considerate, thoughtful. A notification popped up on my phone. Another Facebook post from Jessica. This one showed her and Michael opening presents under her parents' tree. Best Christmas ever, with the people who matter most. The caption read, The people who matter most. The words twisted like a knife. I shut off my phone and looked around at my empty house. The Christmas tree lights still twinkled cheerfully, oblivious to my pain. The wrapped presents underneath, now with no one to open them, seemed to mock me with their festive paper and carefully tied bows. Methodically, I began turning off lights. The Christmas music that had played all day was silenced. The candles I had planned to light during dinner were returned to their drawer. One by one, I dimmed the joy I had so carefully cultivated in anticipation of this day. In my bedroom, I removed the green velvet dress and pearl necklace, hanging them up with care, despite knowing I had no reason to wear them again anytime soon. I put on my old flannel pajamas and Robert's cardigan that I still kept on my side of the closet. Its familiar scent had long faded, but wearing it still brought a small measure of comfort. I crawled into bed, though it was barely 9 o'clock. Outside, Christmas lights from neighboring houses cast colorful shadows on my ceiling. Somewhere down the street, I could hear carolers making their rounds. The tears came again, hot and relentless. I cried for the day that had been ruined, for the son who had forgotten me, for the loneliness that now stretched ahead like an endless road. Mostly I cried for Robert, wishing desperately that he were here to hold me and tell me everything would be all right. Eventually, exhaustion overtook me, and I fell into a fitful sleep. Christmas Day, ending not with joy and family togetherness, but with a broken heart and unanswered questions. The day after Christmas dawned gray and cold. I woke with swollen eyes and a heaviness in my chest that made it difficult to breathe. For a moment I considered staying in bed all day. What reason did I have to get up? The house was still decorated for a celebration that hadn't happened. The refrigerator was full of food no one had eaten. My son had made his priorities clear, and I wasn't among them. But decades of routine pushed me to my feet. Robert always said I was stubborn that way, unable to lie down and quit even when the world gave me every reason to do so. "Birds won't feed themselves, know me," I could almost hear him say, using his special nickname for me. Even on the darkest days after his death, I had maintained our backyard bird sanctuary. It was something we had built together over the years, a series of feeders and baths that attracted everything from tiny chickadees to the occasional hawk. Robert had been the one to start it, placing the first simple feeder outside our kitchen window when Michael was just a baby. "So he can learn about nature," he'd explained, though I suspected it was as much for his enjoyment as for our son's education. Over the years, the collection had grown. Michael had helped build some of the feeders as school projects, painting them with childish enthusiasm. Even after he left for college, I had maintained them meticulously, finding comfort in the routine and in the memory of my husband's passion for our backyard visitors. I pulled on my robe and slippers, made a cup of coffee, and stood at the kitchen window. The birds were already gathering despite the early hour, pecking at yesterday's offerings. The sight of their busy movements brought a small measure of normality to this strange, sad morning. With a sigh, I bundled up against the cold and stepped onto the back porch with my container of birdseed. The frigid air bit at my cheeks, a physical discomfort that almost distracted from the emotional pain still throbbing inside me. I moved methodically from feeder to feeder, refilling each one, while chickadees and cardinals flitted impatiently nearby, waiting for me to finish. The routine was soothing in its familiarity, one of the few things in my life that remained unchanged. When I reached the wooden feeder that hung from the old maple tree at the edge of the yard, I noticed something unusual. A small white envelope was wedged beneath it, partially hidden from view. It wasn't wet or weathered, so it couldn't have been there long. With cold, numbed fingers, I pulled it free. My name was written on the front in a familiar handwriting. Michael's distinctive scrawl that slanted slightly to the left, just like his father's had. My heart began to race. How had this gotten here? When I glanced around the yard, as if expecting to see Michael watching from behind a tree, but there was only the silent, snow-covered landscape and the occasional flutter of bird wings. Clutching the envelope, I hurried back inside, leaving the last feeder unfilled. At the kitchen table, I stared at my name written in my son's hand, afraid to open it and discover more hurt, more excuses, more evidence that our relationship had somehow broken beyond repair. Finally, with trembling hands, I carefully opened the envelope. Inside was a folded piece of paper and something small and metal, a key. I unfolded the letter and began to read. "Mom, if you're reading this, it means you're still feeding the birds, still taking care of everything and everyone just like you always have. I'm sorry I couldn't be there for Christmas dinner. The truth is more complicated than you know. I couldn't call or text you properly because Jessica checks my phone constantly. She's been monitoring all my communications for months now. What began as occasional glances at my messages has become complete surveillance. She has all my passwords, checks my location throughout the day, and becomes suspicious if I'm unaccounted for, even briefly. Things with Jessica aren't what they seem. What looks like a perfect marriage on Facebook is actually a nightmare I can't wake up from. She's isolated me from friends one by one, making up conflicts or creating situations where I'm forced to choose her over them. Now she's working on separating me from you. The constant criticism started small. Comments about my clothes, my opinions, my work. Now nothing I do is right. She controls our finances, though we both work. My paychecks go into an account she manages, and I have to ask for money like a child receiving an allowance. When I try to stand up for myself, She either threatens self-harm or becomes so emotionally distraught that I end up apologizing just to restore peace. I know this sounds insane as I write it, but it's happened so gradually that I didn't see it clearly until recently. The key enclosed is to a storage unit at Bayside Storage Unit 2 and 17. The code to enter the facility is 5924. Inside, you'll find evidence of everything I've told you and more. Financial records journals. I've kept recordings of arguments. I've been documenting everything for months, building the courage to leave. I'm planning to get out soon, but I need to do it carefully. Jessica's behavior has become increasingly erratic, and I'm genuinely concerned about what she might do if I confront her directly. Please don't try to contact me about this through normal channels. I'll reach out when I can do so safely. I love you, Mom. I always have. Please don't give up on me. Michael. I read the letter 3 times, my hands shaking more violently with each reading. The words blurred through my tears, but their meaning was painfully clear. My son wasn't callous or uncaring. He was trapped in an abusive relationship, reaching out the only way he could. The key felt suddenly heavy in my palm, a tangible connection to my son's secret struggle. All at once, everything made sense. The gradual distancing, the canceled plans, the personality changes I had attributed to natural growing apart or the normal evolution of a new marriage. How had I missed the signs? Had I been so focused on my own feelings of abandonment that I failed to see my son's silent cries for help? A surge of maternal determination rose within me, pushing aside my hurt feelings. Michael needed me perhaps more than he ever had as a child, and I would not fail him. With new purpose, I dressed quickly and gathered my things. The storage facility was about 45 minutes away in the neighboring town where Michael had grown up. I could be there before noon if I left now. As I backed out of my driveway, I glanced at my Christmas-decorated house, seeing it now not as a symbol of my loneliness, but as a beacon of hope. I would bring my son home. Somehow, I would help him find his way back. The key clutched in my hand was more than access to a storage unit. It was the first step toward reclaiming my son from the darkness that had enveloped him. And I would turn it, no matter what secrets it revealed. The drive to Bayside Storage felt endless. Although I'd made the journey to the neighboring town countless times over the years today, each mile stretched with anticipation and dread. What exactly would I find in that storage unit? How bad was Michael's situation really? Snow had begun to fall again, light flakes that danced in my headlights as I navigated the familiar roads. I gripped the steering wheel tightly. Michael's letter folded in my pocket, the key to the storage unit secured in my purse. Bayside Storage was a modern facility at the edge of town, rows of identical metal units behind a security gate. I punched in the code Michael had provided, 5924, and the gate rolled open with a mechanical groan. Following the numbered signs, I parked in front of Unit 217, my heart hammering against my ribs. For a moment, I sat in my idling car, gathering courage. Part of me feared what I might discover. What if Michael was exaggerating? What if this was all some elaborate excuse for his behavior? No. The Michael I raised wouldn't do that. If he said he was in trouble, he was in trouble. Taking a deep breath, I stepped out into the cold. The key slid smoothly into the lock. With a twist of my wrist, the padlock clicked open. I lifted the metal door, wincing at its loud rattle as it rolled upward. Inside was not the jumble of random possessions I had half expected. Instead, the small unit was meticulously organized with labeled plastic bins, a filing cabinet, and a desk with a laptop computer. It looked like a makeshift office, a secret command center for my son's planned escape. I approached the nearest bin labeled Financial Records in Michael's neat handwriting. Inside were bank statements, credit card bills, investment account information, all revealing a disturbing pattern. Large withdrawals from their joint savings credit cards, maxed out with purchases Michael couldn't possibly have made, loan applications in Michael's name for amounts that had never reached him. Jessica had been systematically draining their finances for months, leaving Michael with virtually nothing of his own while accumulating debt in his name. The next bin contained printed emails and text messages, conversations between Jessica and various people in Michael's life, former friends with whom she had manufactured conflicts while pretending to be Michael, colleagues she had alienated through false messages, even exchanges with me where responses I had never seen had apparently come from my son's accounts. My hands trembled as I opened the filing cabinet. The top drawer contained a thick journal, page after page of Michael's increasingly desperate entries documenting Jessica's manipulation, gaslighting, and emotional abuse. He described being constantly criticized, made to doubt his own perceptions, isolated from support systems, and financially controlled. One entry from just 3 months ago broke my heart. Had a dream about Christmas at Mom's last night, the way it used to be before Jessica. Woke up actually crying. I miss my mother so much, but Jay has convinced everyone that Naomi is the problem, that she's clingy and manipulative, the exact things Jay is doing herself. I don't know how to break free without losing everything. In the bottom drawer, I found a small voice recorder and several USB drives labeled with dates. With shaking hands, I connected one to the laptop on the desk. The computer came to life requesting a password. I tried Michael's birthday. The screen flashed red. Frustrated, I tried several other combinations before remembering a detail from his letter. Feeding the birds. I typed birds. The screen unlocked. The USB drive contained audio recordings and videos. I clicked on the most recent one dated just 2 weeks ago. Jessica's voice filled the small space, shrill and accusatory. "You think I don't know you called your mother? Do you think I'm stupid, Michael? After everything she's done to try to come between us?" "Mom hasn't done anything," Michael's voice replied, sounding exhausted. "She just wanted to confirm Christmas plans." "Oh, please. She's always trying to manipulate you, make you feel guilty for choosing me." "Well, you know what? We're not going to her pathetic little Christmas dinner. We're staying with my family." "We already told her we'd be there," Michael protested weakly. "And now we're telling her we won't." Jessica's voice rose dangerously. "Unless you don't want to be with me anymore. Is that it? You want to leave me? Go ahead, leave. See how far you get with no money and no friends. Your mother can't help you. She can barely help herself in that sad little house." The recording continued documenting Jessica's rapid mood swings, from rage to tears, to calculated calm, all aimed at controlling Michael's behavior. I listened to recording after recording, each worse than the last. Videos showed Jessica screaming at Michael over minor issues, then minutes later acting as if nothing had happened. Other clips captured her threatening self-harm when Michael tried to assert independence, or methodically gaslighting him about events that had clearly occurred. In one particularly disturbing video, Jessica was seen going through Michael's wallet while he slept, photographing his credit cards and ID, then carefully replacing everything exactly as she had found it. As the evidence mounted, so did my anger and determination. This wasn't just emotional manipulation. It was systematic abuse designed to break down my son's sense of self and isolate him from anyone who might help him. The final item I discovered was a manila envelope labeled Exit Strategy. Inside was a detailed plan Michael had been developing: financial steps, legal consultations, safety precautions, and a timeline. According to his notes, he had been planning to leave Jessica in February after secretly securing an apartment and separating their finances as much as possible. But one detail in his plan made my blood run cold. "Under risks," Michael had written, "Jessica has threatened suicide if I leave. While I believe this is primarily manipulation, the possibility it's genuine cannot be ignored. Have consulted with Dr. Andrews confidentially about appropriate responses and resources." My son was not only trapped in an abusive marriage, but carrying the terrible weight of believing his escape might trigger his wife's self-destruction. No wonder he had seemed so distant, so changed. He was drowning, and had been reaching out in the only way he felt safe doing. As I carefully returned everything to its place, a new emotion replaced my initial shock and anger. Resolve. Pure maternal resolve. Michael needed an ally, someone who understood the full scope of his situation and could help him execute his escape plan safely. I had spent 3 years mourning Robert and feeling sorry for myself. But now my son needed me to be strong again, to be the mother who had once fought fiercely for his happiness and well-being. That woman hadn't disappeared. She had just been dormant, waiting for purpose. As I locked the storage unit and walked back to my car, I knew what I had to do. The abandoned Christmas dinner now seemed insignificant compared to the battle that lay ahead. My son was in trouble, and I would not rest until he was free. The snow was falling harder as I drove home, but my vision had never been clearer. I wasn't just fighting for my relationship with my son anymore. I was fighting for his very freedom and safety. And like any mother protecting her child, I would not back down no matter what the cost. The weeks that followed my discovery at the storage unit transformed me. The hurt, lonely widow became a woman with purpose, a mother on a mission to save her son. I approached the situation with the same methodical care that Michael had shown in his planning, understanding that one wrong move could make things worse for him. First, I needed to establish contact in a way Jessica couldn't monitor. Following the trail of Michael's research in the storage unit, I learned about creating secure communication channels. I purchased a prepaid phone and left it in a weatherproof container behind the bird feeder where I had found his letter, along with a note. Found everything. I understand now. Call when safe. I'm here. Mom. 3 days passed before the phone rang at 11:30 at night. I had kept it with me constantly, even sleeping with it under my pillow. Mom. Michael's voice was barely above a whisper. Michael. I breathed relief flooding through me. Are you okay? Not really, he admitted. But better knowing you found everything. I'm sorry about Christmas. About everything. Don't apologize, I said firmly. None of this is your fault. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I was ashamed, he confessed, his voice cracking. I'm a 34-year-old accountant. I should have seen the financial manipulation coming. And a man who lets his wife control and abuse him, who would believe that? I believe it, I assured him. The evidence is overwhelming, Michael. And this happens to people of all types, successful, intelligent people who are manipulated by those they trust. Jessica's asleep, he continued. She took a sleeping pill after we argued earlier. I don't have long. Tell me what you need, what I can do. I've been saving cash slowly, he explained. Small withdrawals she wouldn't notice, tips from helping friends with their taxes that she doesn't know about. I've got almost enough for the security deposit on an apartment, but I need somewhere to go immediately. When I leave somewhere, she won't think to look right away. Here, I said without hesitation. Come home, Michael. There was a pause, and I could hear him struggling with emotion. She'll come looking for me there first. Not if we're smart about it, not if we prepare. We talked for nearly an hour, refining the plan he had already begun developing. He would leave when Jessica went on a weekend trip with her mother in 3 weeks. I would drive to Boston with a rental car Jessica wouldn't recognize and help him move his most important possessions. We would take a roundabout route home to ensure we weren't followed. In the meantime, I had work to do. I contacted a domestic abuse support organization, explaining the situation and seeking resources specifically for male victims, which were less common but still available. I spoke with a lawyer about protecting Michael financially and legally when he made his move. I installed security cameras around my property and had new, more secure locks installed on all doors. I also began subtly preparing my home. I cleared out the spare bedroom that had become something of a storage space since Robert died, making it a proper room again. I stocked the kitchen with Michael's favorite foods. I gathered information about local job opportunities in his field, in case he decided to make a fresh start away from Boston. 2 days before the planned escape, Michael called again from the prepaid phone. Change of plans, he said, his voice tight with anxiety. Jessica canceled her trip with her mother. She's suspicious about something. I think she may have found one of my journals. My heart sank. What do we do now? I can't wait any longer, he said firmly. Her behavior is escalating. Yesterday, she accidentally deleted all my contacts from my phone and laptop. When I got upset, she cried for hours about how I don't trust her. Then this morning, she casually mentioned selling my car without consulting me because we don't really need 2 vehicles. That's concerning. I agreed, understanding these as classic isolation tactics. When then? Tomorrow, he decided. She has a hair appointment at 2 p.m. They usually take at least 3 hours with her color treatment. It's the only time I can be certain of having enough time. We quickly revised our plan. I would leave at dawn, arrive in Boston by mid-morning, and park several blocks from their condo. Michael would pack only what he absolutely needed in a backpack he could grab quickly. We would be on the road before Jessica's appointment was finished. That night I barely slept. I checked and rechecked my preparations. The spare room was ready. I had cash on hand in case we needed it. The lawyer and support resources were on standby. I had even prepared my neighbors, telling them a partial truth, that my son was coming to stay while going through a difficult separation, and that his wife might come looking for him in an agitated state. Morning came with a light drizzle that turned to sleet as I drove south toward Boston. The weather matched my mood, gray and anxious, but determined. I arrived 20 minutes early and texted Michael from my hiding spot several blocks from his condo building. "In position, ready when you are." His response came quickly. "She just left, moving fast." 15 minutes later, Michael emerged from the building, a backpack slung over one shoulder and a small duffel bag in his hand. He looked around cautiously before walking briskly in my direction. Even from a distance, I could see how thin he had become, how his shoulders hunched slightly as if expecting a blow. When he slid into the passenger seat of my rental car, I had to resist the urge to pull him into a fierce hug. Instead, I simply squeezed his hand and put the car in drive. "Let's go home," I said quietly. We were on the highway heading north when Michael's phone began ringing incessantly. Jessica had discovered his absence sooner than expected. He silenced the phone without answering. "She'll track the phone," he explained, powering it off completely. "But I needed to bring it for the evidence it contains." We stopped at a small electronics store in New Hampshire where Michael purchased a new phone and transferred only the contacts he trusted. The old phone was placed in a signal-blocking pouch the store sold for privacy protection. As we continued our journey, Michael gradually began to talk more freely. He told me about the early days with Jessica, how charming and attentive she had been, how the control had begun so subtly he hardly noticed. She would compliment me for agreeing with her choices, make me feel good about giving in, he explained. Then gradually, any disagreement became a personal betrayal in her eyes. By the time I realized what was happening, I was isolated from everyone who might have helped me see it clearly. "Including me," I said softly. "Especially you," he admitted. She saw our close relationship as the biggest threat. She worked hardest to come between us. The miles passed as Michael unburdened himself, sharing the painful details of his captivity. By the time we crossed into Maine, a weight seemed to have lifted from him. He wasn't free of Jessica's influence yet. That would take time and probably therapy, but he had taken the crucial first step. As we pulled into my driveway, Michael looked at my modest home with an expression I hadn't seen in years. Relief. Pure relief. "The Christmas decorations are still up," he noted with surprise. "I couldn't bring myself to take them down," I admitted. "It felt like giving up on something important." Michael nodded, understanding what I didn't explicitly say, that I had been waiting for him to come home. We carried his few possessions inside as darkness fell. In the kitchen, I warmed up homemade soup I had prepared the day before, and we sat at the table where Christmas dinner should have been shared. "I'm sorry about Christmas, Mom," Michael said again, his eyes downcast. "When Jessica saw your text confirming our plans, she deliberately created a scenario where I had to choose. She threatened to make a scene at her parents' house to tell them I was abusing her if I insisted on coming to see you." "You don't need to explain," I assured him. "I understand now." "But I need you to know I wanted to be here," he insisted. "Every Christmas, every birthday, every time I canceled or cut a visit short, it was never because I didn't want to see you." I reached across the table and took his hand. "We have time now. We'll make new memories." That night, as Michael slept in his childhood bedroom for the first time in years, I sat in the living room looking at the Christmas tree that still stood in the corner. Its lights twinkled in the darkness, no longer a reminder of abandonment, but a symbol of hope and new beginnings. The journey ahead would not be easy. Jessica had already called my house phone a dozen times, alternating between tearful pleas and vicious threats. Tomorrow, Michael would need to begin the legal process of separation. There would be financial entanglements to resolve, mutual friends to contact, explanations to give. But tonight, my son was safe under my roof. The maternal instinct that had driven me since finding his letter had been validated. I had not failed him. I had found the strength to help when he needed me most. As I finally headed to bed, I passed Michael's room and heard soft, even breathing through the partially open door. For the first time since finding that letter in the bird feeder, I allowed myself to fully believe that things would be okay. My Christmas miracle had come late, but it had come. My son had found his way home. 6 months have passed since that January day when Michael returned home. Spring came and went, and now summer blankets our little corner of Maine in warmth and light. The Christmas decorations are long gone, packed away until the next holiday season, one we're already planning to celebrate together properly. Michael's journey to healing has been neither quick nor easy, but he's making steady progress. The first few weeks were the hardest, with Jessica alternating between desperate pleas for reconciliation and vindictive attacks. She showed up at my house 3 times, once in the middle of the night, screaming for Michael to come home. The security cameras I'd installed proved invaluable, documenting her erratic behavior for the restraining order Michael eventually had to file. The financial entanglement took months to resolve, with Jessica fighting every step of the way. Michael discovered she had opened several credit cards in his name without his knowledge, running up thousands in debt. With the help of the lawyer I'd contacted and the meticulous records Michael had kept, he was able to prove fraud and protect his credit score, though the process was exhausting. What surprised me most was the community that rallied around us once the truth came out. My neighbors formed an informal watch network, alerting us if they spotted Jessica's car in the area. Michael's old friends from high school and college, many of whom Jessica had systematically driven away, reached out to reconnect. Several shared similar experiences of being manipulated by her, validating Michael's experience and helping him overcome the shame that had kept him silent for so long. Michael found a job at a local accounting firm by March, a position that allows him to use his expertise while rebuilding his life. The owner is a contemporary of mine from church who has been understanding about Michael's situation, offering flexibility when he needs time for court appearances or therapy appointments. Therapy has perhaps been the most transformative element of Michael's recovery. He meets with Dr. Simmons, a specialist in trauma and emotional abuse, twice a week. Gradually, I've watched my son reclaim his confidence, his sense of self, his ability to make decisions without second-guessing every choice. "It's like waking up from a fog," he told me recently as we worked together in the garden I've expanded since his return. "I still have moments where I hear her voice in my head telling me I'm making a mistake or that I'm worthless without her. But those moments are getting less frequent." As for me, I've experienced my own rebirth of sorts. The lonely widow who sat at an empty Christmas table has been replaced by a woman with renewed purpose. I've joined a support group for families of abuse survivors, sharing my experience and learning from others who have walked similar paths. I've reconnected with old friends I had withdrawn from in my grief over Robert and my hurt over Michael's apparent abandonment. Most importantly, my relationship with my son has deepened in ways I couldn't have imagined. We talk openly now, not just about the trauma of his marriage, but about everything. Memories of Robert Michael's childhood, our hopes for the future. We cook dinner together most nights, reviving old family recipes and creating new traditions. On Sundays, we feed the birds together, a ritual that now carries special significance, given how the bird feeder became his lifeline to me. Last month, Michael received the final divorce papers. Jessica had finally stopped fighting when her own parents, confronted with evidence of her behavior, stopped funding her legal battle. We marked the occasion not with celebration, but with quiet acknowledgement of a difficult chapter closing. That evening, as we sat on the back porch watching the sunset, Michael turned to me with tears in his eyes. I never thought I'd be back here starting over at 35, he admitted. There are still days I feel like a failure. You're not a failure, I told him firmly. You survived something terrible and you found the courage to leave. That takes extraordinary strength. He nodded, absorbing my words. You know, when I hid that letter in the bird feeder, I wasn't sure you'd find it. Or if you did, whether you'd believe me after how I'd treated you. I'll always believe in you, I said simply. That's what mothers do. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the evening birds calling to one another. I was thinking, Michael finally said, maybe we could invite some people over for a small celebration next weekend. Nothing fancy, just a cookout with a few friends. It's been so long since I've been able to socialize freely. My heart swelled at this sign of his continuing recovery, the desire to reconnect, to rebuild community around himself. I think that sounds wonderful, I replied. As the stars began to appear overhead, I reflected on the strange journey that had brought us here. What began with a Christmas dinner that never happened had ultimately led to healing I hadn't dared to hope for. The empty chair at my holiday table had been filled not just temporarily, but permanently, as Michael decided to stay in Maine rather than return to Boston with its painful memories. Sometimes the greatest gifts come disguised as heartbreak. Sometimes what appears to be abandonment is really a cry for help. And sometimes a mother's intuition and a son's courage can combine to create a second chance neither thought possible. What I know now is that family bonds, though they may stretch and strain under pressure, have remarkable resilience when nurtured with love and understanding. Michael and I have both learned not to take these connections for granted, to protect and cherish them as the precious gifts they are. As for Christmas, we've already decided we'll celebrate it twice this year. Once on the actual day, and once in July, a special Christmas in July to make up for the one we missed. Because some traditions are worth waiting for, and some celebrations mean more when they follow struggle and pain. Life has taught me that healing isn't always linear, and happy endings often come after unexpected detours. But with patience, perseverance, and unwavering love, even the deepest wounds can mend, leaving us stronger and more grateful for the second chances we never saw coming. Have you ever discovered a hidden truth that changed your entire perspective on a situation? How did it impact your relationships? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if you found meaning in our journey, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear that second chances are always possible. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, sometimes the key to healing is right there in front of you, just waiting to be found.